Most people think their financial problems come from not earning enough, but the Bible shows something far more confronting. The problem is rarely income, it's disorder. People want God to bless their money while managing it in ways He can't multiply. And meanwhile, wealthy people, many of them far less spiritual, follow simple structures that believers ignore. That's why financial breakthrough feels rare among people who pray, but common among people who plan. Before God multiplies anything, He organizes it. He formed the world before He filled it, structured the crowd before Jesus multiplied bread, and gave Joseph a financial blueprint before Egypt ever faced famine. That divine pattern never changed, and your finances will never transform through motivation alone. You need alignment. You need order. You need a system that matches God's design instead of your emotions. The 15-65-20 rule is exactly that. A blueprint of stewardship that brings clarity where there was confusion, peace where there was panic, and direction where there was guesswork. It's the same pattern wealthy people use quietly and the same principle Scripture teaches openly. And once you begin applying it, even starting small, you'll feel your financial life shifting from chaos to control, from pressure to purpose, from surviving to finally building something that lasts. If you like our content, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description. Because today you're not just learning how to make money, you're learning how to manage it the way God intended, so He can finally multiply what you've been faithfully trying to build. Why most people mismanage money, and the biblical truth behind financial confusion. Most people today walk through life feeling overwhelmed by money, as if the system was designed to confuse them from the start. They jump from trend to trend, hoping that something, anything, will finally help them make money and escape financial stress. Yet the Bible teaches that confusion is never God's design, disorder is. And when someone tries to build a business or a financial life on disorder, even good intentions collapse under the weight of poor structure. That's why so many people work hard and still feel like nothing ever changes. From a theological perspective, the problem isn't ignorance, it's misalignment. Scripture warns in Hosea 4:6 that, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." But that knowledge isn't just information, it's application. Many people hear about investing, budgeting, compounding, and business principles, yet never put them into practice. It's like reading Proverbs every morning, but refusing to apply its wisdom about money in real life. The gap between knowing and doing is where most financial frustration is born, and that gap widens when emotions, not principles, lead the decisions. There's also a spiritual dimension that often goes unnoticed. People try to make money based on impulse, fear, comparison, and pressure. Exactly the emotional traps Proverbs warns against. Proverbs 14:15 says, "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps." When someone invests because TikTok told them to, or because their coworker bragged about a crypto coin, they're operating without prudence. And any business or financial plan built on emotion instead of wisdom becomes a house built on sand, not rock. Another overlooked truth is stewardship. God never told His people to chase money. He told them to manage it. In Luke 16:10, Jesus teaches that whoever is faithful with little will be faithful with much. Most people want much without managing little, so they stay stuck. They dream of earning more, yet consistently fail to plan for what they already have. That's like praying for rain but never preparing a field. No farmer in Scripture prospered by prayer alone. They prospered through prayer plus stewardship, prayer plus diligence, prayer plus strategy. Let's bring this to a practical example. Imagine someone earning $3,000 a month. They believe the reason they can't build wealth is because they need to make money at a higher level. So they chase new jobs, side hustles, courses, and shortcuts. But the real issue is they have no structure for the money already in their hands. Without a plan, even $10,000 a month would disappear just as fast. That's why so many people increase income yet stay financially stuck. The problem isn't the paycheck, it's the management. This is exactly where the biblical perspective becomes liberating. When someone understands that God is not chaotic, and that His principles for money reflect His nature, order, clarity, diligence, they begin to see why wealth seems so mysterious. It's not because wealth is complicated. It's because confusion thrives where order is absent. And once that order begins to form, something powerful happens. Clarity grows, patterns emerge, and a person becomes ready to step into the system that God uses to multiply what they have. And that system is exactly what we begin to uncover in the next topic. The 15-65-20 rule, God's blueprint of order before multiplication. Before God multiplies anything, he first brings order. This pattern shows up all over Scripture. Before God filled the earth, he formed it. Before he multiplied the widow's oil, he instructed her to gather vessels. Before Jesus multiplied the loaves, he told the crowd to sit down in groups. Order precedes overflow. And that's exactly why the 15, 65, and 20 rule works. It aligns your money with divine structure, turning chaos into clarity and clarity into growth. People want God to bless their finances, but blessing requires a container. And this system becomes that container. The beauty of this framework is that it's simple enough for anyone to apply, whether they run a business, work a 9-to-5, or are just trying to make money consistently without stress. Instead of reacting to expenses or guessing what to do with each paycheck, this structure tells your money where to go before your emotions get a vote. That's stewardship. Intentionality before impulse. It's the same principle Jesus highlighted in Luke 14:28 when he asked who would build a tower without first counting the cost. Most people aren't failing financially, they're building towers without blueprints. Each percentage of this rule serves a prophetic function in your financial life. The 15% is about future protection and multiplication. The 65% ensures discipline and sustainability. The 20% preserves emotional balance and long-term endurance. It's not random math. It's a design. Think of it like the instructions God gave Noah. They weren't suggestions, they were measurements. And when Noah followed the measurements, the ark survived the storm. When people follow this structure, their money survives modern storms. Inflation, emergencies, layoffs, overspending, and emotional decisions. From a financial and economic standpoint, systems like this are how people make money consistently over decades, not by chasing trends, but by creating predictable behaviors. Wealthy people don't ask, how much do I feel like saving this month? They follow structure. They automate decisions. They remove the emotional roller coaster from their finances. This is why the wealthy grow even when the economy is unstable. They follow principles, not feelings. It's Proverbs 24:3 in action. By wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. What makes this rule especially powerful is how predictable it becomes over time. When someone consistently allocates money according to these percentages, every paycheck turns into progress. They stop feeling guilty about spending because it fits inside the 20%. They stop panicking about bills because they fit inside the 65%, and they stop fearing the future because the 15% begins to grow into something meaningful. It brings peace, financial peace, emotional peace, spiritual peace, because order always produces peace. And once someone begins to live inside this framework, something shifts. They start experiencing what I call holy momentum, small, consistent acts of stewardship that gradually open the door to greater responsibility and greater blessing. The 15-65-20 rule isn't just a financial strategy, it's an invitation to experience the kind of order that God honors and multiplies. And now that the structure is clear, the next step is to understand why the very first portion, the 15%, is the key that determines whether your financial future collapses or compounds. The first 15%, savings, investing, and the biblical law of preparing for the future. The first 15% is the cornerstone of the entire system because it represents preparation, a principle the Bible repeats from Genesis to Revelation. When Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream in Genesis 41, he didn't just reveal the problem, he presented a financial strategy. Save consistently during times of abundance to survive and thrive during times of scarcity. That's exactly what this 15% does. It's the portion of your money assigned to protect your future and multiply your resources long before crises come knocking. Godly wisdom doesn't react to trouble, it prepares for it. This 15% has two missions. The first is to create a safety net, a buffer between you and financial panic. Emergencies don't ask for permission, they simply arrive. A flat tire, a medical bill, a sudden job loss, these moments expose whether someone has practiced the discipline of preparation. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." In modern language, the wise build savings, the foolish live unprotected. Even in business, companies keep cash reserves because liquidity determines survival. Households should operate with that same wisdom. The second mission of this 15% is far more exciting. Multiplication through investing. This is where your money starts to make money, and where biblical principles meet financial math. Ecclesiastes 11:2 encourages diversification. Divide your portion into 7, yes, into 8. A subtle reminder that investing isn't gambling, it's stewardship. Wealthy people understand this. They place their 15% into vehicles that grow, index funds, retirement accounts, diversified portfolios. And when someone aligns with this principle, compound interest becomes the closest thing to financial harvest the modern world offers. Consider an example that mirrors Sarah and James from earlier. Imagine someone investing $200 a month starting at age 25, earning a conservative 7% annually. By age 50, they'd have over $150,000. But if they start at 35, investing the same amount, they end up with roughly $75,000, half the wealth for the same effort. The difference? Time. This is the biblical law of sowing and reaping operating inside finances. Galatians 6:7 says, "A person reaps what they sow." Starting early allows your seed more seasons to multiply. This is why wealthy people prioritize getting this 15% automated. They remove the emotional decision-making and treat it like a non-negotiable commitment, just like tithing. It's not about whether they feel like saving or whether the market looks exciting. It's about consistency. A business won't survive if it reinvests whenever it feels like it, and personal wealth works the same way. Automation is discipline disguised as convenience. Once set, it keeps preparing and multiplying without demanding daily willpower. What's powerful is that once someone experiences what this 15% can produce, their mindset shifts. They stop seeing savings as sacrifice and start seeing it as strategy. They realize they're not losing money, they're planting it. And that seed moves them from survival mode into stewardship mode, where their future finally feels stable and their calling feels financially possible. But the true breakthrough comes when they understand why the timing of this 15% matters even more than the amount, because not all seeds produce the same harvest when planted late. Time, compounding, and the spiritual law of sowing and reaping in your wealth journey. Time is the hidden multiplier that most people underestimate. They chase ways to make money fast, yet ignore the one force that even billionaires can't buy: time. In finance, time turns small seeds into large harvests through compounding. And in Scripture, time is the field where God grows every promise. Galatians 6:7 declares, "A man reaps what he sows." But the following verses remind us that harvest comes in due season. Wealth grows the same way, slowly, quietly, consistently, until one day the harvest surprises even the one who planted it. Compounding is simply the mathematical expression of a spiritual truth. What you sow multiplies after time has its way with it. Just like a seed doesn't sprout overnight, your money doesn't grow instantly. But when given enough seasons, a small start becomes a large legacy. Consider a real-world example. If someone invests $300 a month at 7% from age 25 to 55, they end up with nearly $380,000. But if they wait until 35 to start, investing the same amount, they end with roughly $185,000. Same effort, half the results. The difference? Time in the ground. We see this principle reflected in biblical stories as well. When Isaac sowed during a famine in Genesis 26, he didn't reap 100-fold overnight. He reaped that same year, meaning the seed had time to die, root, grow, and multiply. Financial seeds behave the same way. They require patience and consistency. Wealthy people understand this, which is why they build financial systems based on time, not trends. They let compounding do the heavy lifting while they stay focused on their business, calling, and stewardship. This is also why people who start early, even with small amounts, often build more wealth than those who start late with larger amounts. Sarah versus James isn't just a story. It's a financial sermon. Sarah's $10,000 grew to over $32,000 because she gave it 20 years. James invested $20,000 and ended with less because he gave it half the time. When you look closely, compounding rewards faithfulness far more than intensity. God's economy favors consistency over chaos. From a money perspective, the earlier someone starts investing their 15%, the sooner their dollars begin generating their own children. Those financial children then grow into grandchildren. That's why compounding is often called exponential growth. It accelerates. The growth in year 20 is dramatically larger than the growth in year 5. It mirrors Proverbs 13:11. Whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. The growth is invisible at first, slow, boring, unimpressive. Then suddenly it becomes undeniable. Once someone embraces the spiritual and mathematical power of time, their financial stress begins to fade. They no longer panic over slow progress because they understand that real wealth isn't built in a weekend, it's built in seasons. And when they finally see the harvest that compounding produces, they realize something profound. Managing money is less about chasing opportunities and more about respecting timing. and this respect for timing unlocks the wisdom needed for the next step, mastering the 65% that determines whether your harvest grows or gets devoured. The 65% rule: how to master your lifestyle before it masters you. The 65% rule is where most people feel the greatest resistance, because it challenges the part of human nature that always wants just a little more. Lifestyle inflation is subtle. It whispers that the new paycheck deserves a new apartment, a better car, nicer meals, and upgrades that feel harmless, but quietly consume the money meant for your future. This is why Hebrews 13:5 teaches, "Be content with what you have." Not to limit ambition, but to protect purpose. When lifestyle grows faster than discipline, even someone who makes money well will end up trapped. Financially, the 65% boundary is a safeguard against emotional spending. When people don't set limits, their expenses expand like water poured onto any available surface, automatically and without intention. Economists call this Parkinson's Law. Expenses rise to match income. But Scripture warned about this principle long before economics existed. Proverbs 25:28 says, "A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls." A life without financial boundaries doesn't just overspend, it becomes vulnerable. What makes the 65% so practical is that it forces a person to evaluate what is truly essential: housing, transportation, utilities, basic food. These belong inside the boundary. But much of what modern culture calls essential is emotional, not necessary. The wealthy understand this deeply. They often live below their means in these categories early on, not because they lack ambition, but because they see every unnecessary dollar spent today as a stolen seed that could multiply tomorrow. That's how they build business empires that withstand pressure. Let's bring this into real numbers. Suppose someone earns $4,000 a month. The 65% rule means all essential expenses must stay under $2,600. That may require trade-offs: a smaller apartment, a reliable used car instead of a financed new one, groceries cooked at home instead of takeout. None of these decisions feel glamorous, but they create margin. And margin is where stewardship lives. Without margin, even people who make money consistently end up cycling through stress, debt, and disappointment. From a biblical standpoint, living within limits is not deprivation, it's wisdom. God gave boundaries to Adam and Eden, food laws to Israel, building measurements to Noah and Moses. Boundaries are not restrictions, they are protection. When someone embraces the 65% rule, they are essentially saying, "I refuse to let the world dictate my lifestyle. I choose intentionality over impulse." This mindset creates stability not just for the individual, but for families, ministries, and businesses connected to them. Eventually, something profound happens. The person begins to feel lighter. Bills stop overwhelming them. Anxiety decreases. They regain control. And for the first time, they experience what wealthy people have known for decades. Peace doesn't come from earning more money, it comes from mastering what you already have. With this mastery established, the heart becomes ready for the next part of the journey, enjoying the blessings of today without sabotaging the blessings God intends for tomorrow. The 20% rule: enjoying life without sabotaging the business God gave you. The 20% rule is where financial wisdom meets emotional health. Many people think the path to wealth requires eliminating every form of enjoyment, but that approach always leads to burnout. God never designed stewardship to feel like punishment. Ecclesiastes 3 says there is a time to laugh, a time to enjoy the fruit of your labor. The 20% rule embraces this biblical truth. You can enjoy life, rest, hobbies, and moments of joy while still honoring God's order for your money and the business He placed in your hands. The purpose of the 20% is simple but powerful. It gives you permission to make money and still enjoy what you've earned without guilt. When enjoyment has a boundary, it becomes healthy. But when it has no boundary, it becomes sabotage. The wealthy understand this better than anyone. They don't try to live like monks or deny themselves every pleasure. Instead, they treat enjoyment as a controlled investment in their emotional balance, creativity, and long-term consistency. This is why their systems last decades, not just months. From a behavioral standpoint, the 20% protects you from the binge and purge cycle of finances. People who attempt to save 100% of their extra money eventually explode. They overspend, lose momentum, and fall back into old habits. The 20% prevents that collapse by creating room for pleasurable spending inside a disciplined structure. It removes the emotional tension between "I must save everything" and "I deserve to spend something." This balance strengthens your long-term ability to make money consistently without resenting your own financial plan. Let's bring this into real numbers. If someone earns $5,000 a month, $1,000, 20%, becomes a designated enjoyment budget. That can cover brunches, weekend trips, a new outfit, hobbies, coffee rituals, whatever brings authentic joy. The key is intentionality. You don't treat every impulse as a need, and you don't steal from next month's 20%. When it's gone, it's gone. Even wealthy people follow this rule. They understand that discipline builds wealth, but joy sustains discipline. From a biblical perspective, this is deeper than budgeting. It is worship expressed through stewardship. God doesn't want people to idolize money by hoarding it, nor does he want them to waste it in foolishness. He wants alignment. Proverbs 17:22 says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine." Even in business, rest and enjoyment increase creativity, clarity, and leadership effectiveness. When someone honors this 20% with wisdom, they become more stable emotionally and more effective spiritually. And here's the hidden benefit. When enjoyment is intentional, the desire for impulsive spending decreases. People start realizing that peace, clarity, and joy come not from buying everything they want, but from knowing everything they spend has a place. This mindset transforms how they live, how they lead, and how they handle the money God entrusts to them. And once this balance is established, they're ready for the final and most encouraging truth. What to do when life is too tight to start with 15, 65, 20, and how God multiplies even the smallest faithful beginning. When you can't start with 15, 65, 20, building wealth, one biblical step at a time. Not everyone can jump straight into the 15, 65, 20 rule, and that's not a failure, it's reality. God never demanded perfection to begin your journey. He simply asked for faithfulness with what's in your hand. Zechariah 4:10 says, "Do not despise the day of small beginnings." Because every great financial transformation, every business, every investor, every wealth builder started small. Some people begin with 5%, not 15%. Some need time to push their essentials from 80% down to 65%, and God honors every step of obedience, no matter how small it looks today. The mistake many people make is believing that if they can't follow the full structure now, there's no point in trying. But that mindset destroys momentum. Wealthy people don't wait for perfect conditions, they build discipline in imperfect ones. Even starting with $20 a month is a seed. Proverbs 13:11 says, "Whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow." That is not a suggestion, it's a principle. Little by little is the biblical blueprint for anyone who wants to make money consistently without collapsing under unrealistic pressure. Let's make this practical. If someone earns $2,500 a month but currently spends 90% on essentials, the goal isn't to magically jump to 65%. The goal is to lower expenses by 1-2% each month, maybe cooking one more meal at home, maybe canceling a subscription, maybe choosing a cheaper commute. Every adjustment frees up money, not to deprive you, but to prepare you. In business, this is called incremental optimization. In Scripture, it's called stewardship. The outcome is the same. Small improvements compound into meaningful change. Starting with a smaller percentage also helps you build emotional resilience. When someone tries to overhaul their financial life overnight, they usually burn out. But when they start small, they build confidence with every win. The moment you save 5% consistently, something shifts in your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles with money and start seeing yourself as someone who manages it. Identity change always precedes financial change. That's why God works in steps, not leaps. Another important truth is this: as income grows, the system automatically scales with you. A raise, a side hustle, a new business revenue stream. Every increase becomes an opportunity to inch closer to 15, 65, 20. And because your percentages stay the same, lifestyle inflation doesn't swallow your progress. This is how regular people, teachers, drivers, small business owners, employees, gradually build wealth. Not through miracles, but through method. Not through luck, but through alignment. It's a long-term reward that favors those who stay consistent. And eventually, something beautiful happens. The person who once couldn't save 5% is now saving 15%. The person who once lived at 90% now lives in peaceful margin at 65%. They begin to feel a calm they've never known, a sense of control, clarity, and calling. They realize that God wasn't asking for perfection, He was shaping consistency. And consistency is what opens the door to abundance. Because once someone embraces these small beginnings, their financial life shifts from surviving to preparing for the supernatural things God can do next. After walking through the 15-65-20 blueprint, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Wealth isn't built by chance, emotion, or wishing for a breakthrough. It's built through stewardship, small decisions repeated with purpose. The Bible never promised that money would fall from the sky, but it did promise that God multiplies what is managed. And now you've seen exactly how order, boundaries, and consistency turn ordinary people into builders of long-term, God-aligned prosperity. But the question now is simple. What are you going to do with this wisdom? Will you let this video be interesting, or will it become a turning point in your life? Because transformation doesn't come from hearing, it comes from doing. Your next paycheck is another chance to apply what you've learned. Your next financial decision is another opportunity to honor God through structure instead of stress. Every step you take toward discipline pulls you further away from financial anxiety and closer to the life God intended for you. Write in the comments, "I take authority over my finances starting today," and watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. If this message touched you in any way, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description, subscribing to the channel, and activating notifications so you don't miss the next teaching that will take your financial life to another level.